Also, cytokinesis stimulates cell division in the meristem. Meristems are the actively dividing portion of the plant, and it's majorly the shoot tip and the root tip. So cytokinesis stimulates division in the meristem and in the embryo in combination with auxins. Cytokinesis induces flowering in some plants. Also, it promotes growth of lateral buds into branches. So lateral buds can develop into branches, and it delays aging in plant organ, just like the abscission layer is delayed. Then cytokinesis stimulates root development, and it increases resistance of some plants to harmful effects such as virus infection, radiation, and low temperature. So it creates resistance in some plants to harmful effects. The abscisic acid is synthesized in the mature green leaves, fruits, and root caps. Abscisic acid together with auxin acts to control leaf and fruit fall, so preventing abscission, that is falling off of leaf or fruits. Then abscisic acid is an inhibitor whose effects are opposed to auxins, globulins, and cytokinase. Abscisic acid induces bud dormancy in an unfavorable condition. While auxin is breaking seed dormancy, you can see that abscisic acid is inducing bud dormancy when the environmental condition is unfavorable. Also, abscisic acid brings about aging in leaves and regulates the opening and closing of stomata. For ethane or ethylene, it is produced in leaves, stem, and young fruits in various concentrations. It retards lateral bud development and quickens abscission of leaves. So this one makes sure that leaf falls on time. Then it hastens ripening of fruits. So you can apply ethylene or ethane to your fruits to make it ripe on time. It speeds up the aging of plants. Now, florigine is another plant hormone that is manufactured in the leaves, and it promotes the growth in flowers. Kinins promotes cell division in the presence of auxins. Now we move on to another topic, and that is nervous coordination. We'll be talking about the nervous system and everything about that. Nervous system is a series of conducting tissues running to all parts of the body, and they are basically divided into two divisions. We have the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, the CNS and the PNS, central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. They coordinate the activities of an animal. So, central nervous system, we have the brain, the spinal cord. Then the peripheral nervous system consists of the somatic system and the autonomic nervous system. Now, under the peripheral nervous system, like I said, we have somatic system and autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is divided into two. We have the parasympathetic system and the sympathetic system. The sympathetic system is concerned with the regulating events within the animal. So this is a diagrammatic representation of the basic division of the nervous system that I just explained. We have the nervous system divided into two: central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. So we have the central nervous system divided into two, the brain and the spinal cord. Then we have the peripheral nervous system divided into two. We have somatic system, the autonomic nervous system. Then the autonomic nervous system also divided into two. We have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. Now we move on to talk about the nerve cell. The nerve cell is the basic unit of nervous system specialized for transmission of nervous impulses. So the basic unit of nervous system. So you can't talk about nervous system without talking about the nerve cell, because it's the basic unit of the nervous system. It is specialized for transmission of nervous impulses. It can also be called the neuron. It is either called the neuron or the nerve cell. So you will be familiar with it as I use it in the course of this class. The neuron or the nerve cell is the basic unit of the nervous system specialized for transmission of nervous impulses. Now, it consists of three main parts: the cell body, the axon, and the dendrites. Look at the illustration here. We have the cell body. The axon is like the middle portion. Then you have the dendrites. The cell body contains the nucleus and the nucleus granules and has a number of branching extensions called the dendrites. So look at it. The cell body is like the head portion here. So you see that's the cell body. Then it has nucleus inside. It also has what we call nucleus granules. Then the branching, like the branching of a tree, is what is called the dendrites. The dendrites remove incoming nervous impulses and pass them to the cell body. You know, when there is an impulse coming, it reaches the dendrite first before it gets to the cell body. So the dendrite is the one that receives incoming nervous system and pass it to the cell body. So if you are asked the function of dendrites, you should be able to tell the person that. Then the axon, that's the main body, is a single fine fiber which carries impulses away from the cell body. The dendrites receive impulses while the axon carries impulses away from the cell body. So look at it. The dendrites brings in impulse to the cell body while the axon takes or carries away impulses from the cell body. The axon has few branches and may be surrounded by sheaths. The end of the axon connects with another neuron at a gap called synapse or with an effector. These act as a valve so that impulse only pass in one direction. So it tells us that the axon is connected with another neuron or nerve cell. You know, I said that. So it's not as if it's just one nerve cell that you have. No, we have numerous of them in the body system. So they are connected to each other, and that's why we're just talking about one of them and know the importance. Now, the classification of neurons, they are classified into three. We have the sensory neuron, the motor neuron, or the connector neuron. Sensory neuron is also called the afferent neurons. They receive impulses from the receptors. So sensory or afferent neurons receive impulses from the receptors, and examples we have this sense organ. Receptors are sense organs, e.g. your eye, your hair, and so on, your sense organs, and they transmit these impulses to the central nervous system, and they usually have round body. This is what the sensory neuron or the afferent neuron does. They receive impulses from the sense organs. Okay, they receive impulse from the eye, from the hair, or from the skin, whichever of the sense organ. They now transmit that impulse to the central nervous system, and I said the central nervous system is divided into two, the brain and the spinal cord. So sensory neurons receive impulses from the sense organ or from the receptors. That's a general name. An example of receptors is a sense organ, and they transmit them to the central nervous system. Sensory or afferent neurons usually have rounded bodies. The next class of neuron, we have the motor, or what we call the efferent neuron. These receive impulses from the central nervous system and transmit them to the effector organs, such as muscles or glands. Okay, sensory neuron receive impulse from receptors and transmit it to the central nervous system. But motor neurons receive impulses from the central nervous system like a reverse and transfers it to the effector organs. So it's just like that. And the shape of the motor neurons are star-shaped, while sensory neurons have rounded bodies. The third class of neurons, we have what we call the connector or the intermediate neuron. These receive impulses from the sensory neuron and relay them to the motor neuron. So it's like connecting sensory neuron and motor neuron. That's what the connector neuron does. Now we move to talk about the central nervous system, and first we'll be talking about the brain. And I said the central nervous system is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. So talking about the brain first, the vertebrate central nervous system begins as a hollow tube which expands to form the brain that is enclosed in a bony case called the cranium or skull. So that is where the brain, the skull is where the vertebrate central nervous system starts from. Now, the whole brain is covered by membrane called meninges, and the brain consists of two types of nervous tissue. We have the nerve cell, also known as the gray matter, and the nerve fibers called the white matter. So, brain consists of two types of nervous tissue, the gray matter, also known as nerve cells, and the white matter called the nerve fibers. The mammalian brain is divided into three main parts. We have the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. So fore telling you that that's the part that is in front and is large, the large forward part. Then we have the middle portion, which is called the midbrain, and that's narrow. Then we have the hindbrain called the rear part. That's the part that is behind. So it's divided into three major parts. Now, the forebrain. The forebrain is majorly made up of the cerebrum, and it is the largest part of the brain. The cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. It's a deep median fissure, partly divides the cerebrum into the right and the left hemispheres, with many folds, or what we call convolutions. The two